What's up, everyone? Ben Razzie here for Odd Chopper, bringing you all things college basketball on Friday, January 6th. Of course, Saturday. There's going to be a billion games, and we're going to have you covered there. But a little appetizer season never hurt anyone. We've got a handful of games to break down. We're going to do just that today. This is where you want to be. All things betting. If you haven't found us before, if you're stumbling in for the first time, welcome to Odd Chopper. We're breaking down all things college basketball, NBA, NHL, NFL, whatever sport is on. We've got content. We hope you enjoy it. Subscribe. Be part of the team. Let's dive into the card. Here we go. So, say it every time. Said it yesterday, where we split, by the way. Scroll. Not a big scroll. What do we got? 8 games, 10 games? There's probably a couple more. I'm in New York. Games don't appear. But let's get things started in the Ivy. So the Ivy League teams, they play Friday, then they just play the next day. Back-to-back style. Harvard and Brown, competitive game, 1-point spread for the Crimson. Originally, I was going to make my case for Brown. I do lean to them in the game if I had to bet it. The more I dug, the more I realized that both of these teams offensively, both of these teams shooting the ball are so bad that I think this is just going to go under. Even a really low 127.5 point total. I cannot see either of these teams in some iterations even climbing to 60. It's pretty bad, pretty dire. Let's start with Harvard, though. They're a team, 9-6. They're a quality Ivy League team. They've got a big-time player in Ledlum on the inside. He's averaging almost 20 points, 9 boards. Huge drop-off after that. They're not a high-scoring team. 67 points per game, 28% from 3. That is really, really bad. 5th straight road game, also kind of absurd. They've been kind of going back and forth, win one, lose one, win one, lose one. They beat Maine by 1 2 games ago. Then they just lost to Princeton by 3 points, both on the road. Both very, very competitive. But Harvard, like I said, they're defensively stronger than offensively. That's for sure. They don't play particularly fast. 325th in the country in free throw percentage. 359th in the country in 3-point percentage. They're pretty good from inside. But if it's not there, it is pretty dire for this Harvard offense. And again, they lean on their defense. They're a strong defensive team. They've held some quality teams in check this year. So I think that Brown is going to struggle as well because Brown is a 7-7 team who just lost to a good Penn team. No doubt about it. But again, they're not particularly fast. 64 points per game. 32% from 3. I mean, it's a little better, but we're not talking about a super efficient offense by any stretch of the imagination. A little more balanced. They've got 3 guys in double figures. But the shooting stats. So their free throw percentage is 363rd in the country. That's basically as bad as it gets. I'm not even exaggerating. 57% from the line. That's horrible. 210th at 3-point percentage. 204th in 2-point percentage. They're in the bottom half of basically every shooting metric. Both of these teams are outside the top 250 in turnovers. All of this is saying, can you get an outlier shooting game here or there? Sure. But it's not going to be a tempo-based thing. It's not going to be a free throw-based thing. I think both of these teams are going to be more than content to say, first one to basically 60 points wins this game, competitive game. You can get the foul situation late, but again, if you avoid that, I'm going to call for under 127.5 in this spot at -110. I think both these offenses have distinct problems that are not fixable. And defensively, I actually respect both teams, particularly Harvard, but both of these squads have a lot going on. That is the first bet on the board today. Got another one for you to round this out, but if you are new, if your state just came online, if you are looking to get more and more money into your betting bankroll, you see 5 to win 200 in free bets. And this is the guarantee that DraftKings is offering. When these books, sometimes they have deals. And again,
I'm going to go pull the optimal up.
Yeah, 2 games. Right.
These are like Darius Tony, Dobbs. This isn't Saturday, so this is just a full Sunday slate we'll do.
No, that is Saturday, man, because it's Tennessee Jackson.
Oh, Tony, that's right. I forgot Tony's on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know.
I'm an idiot.
No, you're not an idiot. Kadarius Toney just needs to pick a team and stay on.
Stay there, exactly. The fuck, man.
Him and his shitty hamstrings.
Welcome in. It's the Friday edition. We have two games to look at on the No House Advantage slate. So we appreciate you rolling with us. The NHA Strategy Show gets you ready for two big games here. But before we begin with Jeff, of course, who is the staple analyst here on the NHA shows 3 days a week, Mike, who's producing, myself, and no, my heat's not out. I'm actually just trying to sweat through a stomach bug. I don't know how you and I live thousands of miles away, but you somehow gave me the stomach bug that you had last week, Jeff. And I'm not going to forgive you for it, at least in the next 25 minutes.
Well, and to that point, I think our producer, Mike, gave me it to begin with.
Okay.
So it all goes back to Mike.
Chain of command.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not just me, man, but I do apologize. The internet, obviously, one day they're going to come out like 30 years from now, like, oh yeah, you can catch stuff through the internet.
Right, exactly right.
Be.
You clicked on that email, and
that's right.
You weren't hacked.
Doesn't just infect your computer. You get infected too.
I'm telling you, man. I don't know if you watched the show, but that's got Black Mirror written all over it.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, absolutely, man. We just became millionaires. I mean, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm going to get it to the right people over there. Now, speaking of becoming millionaires, you can do that with the right application and strategy. Maybe not in one contest, but if you build up here on a No House Advantage. All right, let's just start, man. We've got two distinctly different games, right? So I'm just curious how you see each of the two games. Let's work in reverse if we can, because the Titans-Jags is the one that matters for both sides, clearly. So yep. I'm just curious, before we start diving into some angles and some guys you think that jump out, some props that we have, both optimal and listed for our projections, which are free, mind you, on NHA. How do you see this for? I mean, it was at 7 at one point. I jumped on the Titans at 7 simply because it was 7. But I don't know how you see this for the second game. Pardon me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're going to get a little bit more muted game than I think people are maybe anticipating. I know the first game we had, I can't even remember what Jacksonville ended up scoring, but it was like 30 plus points. They just kind of tore apart that secondary. I think the Titans have really taken the right approach here. And I'm not saying the Jags were wrong for playing last week, but the Titans were banged up. The Titans are getting a lot of players back, and it's not just the Derrick Henry thing. That's what people are focusing on. But like Jeff Simmons is back, their D-line, they're getting a corner healthy. I think this is going to be a close game, and I think it's going to be slower paced. And, I think that'll lead to sort of just a lower scoring environment. But it doesn't mean that some of these guys are can't be overs. Like, I think that you need to also consider the matchup. It's still a really good matchup for guys like Zay Jones, Chris Kirk in that, because it's still a bad secondary for Tennessee. But, I'm not anticipating like everyone going nuts and Lawrence throwing for 350 or something like that. I think that they'll have to pass into the end of the game because they may need a field goal to win or something, but wouldn't be going crazy on the overs here. Would probably be looking to even take some contrarian stances on some unders.
So you mentioned Chris Kirk. Zay Jones is involved in this as well. And shout out to our Discord here, our premium Discord, because there was an article posted on my page about all of the incentives this weekend. And I can tell you this, like Mike can confirm it, like, following the Eagles is an honorary Philadelphian and Eagles. So I know sometimes that's not a good thing, but, for the most part. Doug Peterson is a player's coach. If Doug Peterson can get somebody some money, that's his MO. Kirk needs 89 yards for $500,000. Zay Jones needs 98. Now, I don't think, to your point, either one of those guys are going to get that number, but I do think that even in a game where winning is the most important here, there's going to be a concerted effort to get both of those guys to football, Jeff. And maybe not all because of that. They happen to be impact players, Kirk as well, more so than Zay Jones. But I think that's a little bit of a, dare I say, narrative that can be threaded below that play.
Yeah, it kind of like works. The two work hand in hand, right? Like if these guys are in good spots. I mean, the Titans are terrible against outside wide receivers. They're actually not that bad against the slot, but like Zay Jones in the first game against Tennessee, like, I mean, he had his way there. I can't even remember the stats he put up, but it may have been close to 100 yards.
Oh, I think you're right. I think that was a breakout.
Yeah, it was kind of like where he started his breakout. He had that little run. Yeah, he went 8 for 77. So,
go. Yeah.
Kirk was a little bit more muted, 5 for 45, but Kirk has been a really good possession receiver. I think that, to your point, what you may see from the Jags is a concerted effort to attack the Tennessee Titans with both these players anyways. So, like I said, even though I do think this will be a closer game, it's not necessarily that I want to fade both of these players. Now, like, obviously the lines come into this. Chris Kirk has a 5.5 reception total. Actually, so does Zay Jones.
Yeah, that's big.
They're big, and like we have them projected as unders. And I'm trying to think of how you go about approaching this. It's a bit of a dicey situation. I think there's a good chance one of these guys probably goes over. If you were playing the numbers, you'd probably say it's Zay Jones, just because, again, he dominated that secondary in the first meeting. But like there's scenarios here too where Kirk gets like 3 catches right off the bat. He's a really effective slot receiver. So what I may do is what I would maybe look to do is maybe leave one of them out and then take a shot on going over on the other one. Because I think that the unders on both these players will actually be pretty popular for the receptions, but they're in pretty strong spots. I think that you're going to see the Jags come out and try and work potentially Kirk, especially really early in this game, and just put Jacksonville back a little bit. And that'll open up the run game. Doug Peterson's a really smart coach. I think he knows that he's got the matchups there with Jones and Chris Kirk to work with.
Yeah. Kirk going over his receptions might be the lesser played contrarian angle, because I think you're right. I think it's easier to, like, I think the average person looking at our free projections is going to look at Zay Jones as a heavy under and say, well, he's more popular. He's been, you mentioned Kirk has been fantastic from a reception standpoint, but you've got some pretty big numbers at times with Jones. He just is the sexier appeal, I think, even though Kirk is the better receiver overall, or at least arguably, right? So I wonder if people will either, just to your point, gloss over Kirk or still go heavy under Kirk and play the over as the contrarian with Jones. So I think you can gain leverage to our field by going over Kirk, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much exactly how I'm looking at it.
Okay.
And, I like Zay Jones interesting because he does have a 56.5 total, like, receiving yards. And I think if you're going to play the over on Jones, I would rather go over on the receiving yards than the receptions. I mean, he's a player who could easily go 5 for 80 and you're left with nothing on the receptions, but you do get there on the yards. Kirk, I think, again, I will not be shocked if he starts off really hot in this game and ends up with like 3 catches on the first drive. I look at him more as a reception play. He could certainly break free for like a 30-yard catch, take the over there. But I think that, again, you don't have to play both of the contrarian angles here. And I think that of my favorite unders, which we do have projected, I think Zay Jones under 5.5 receptions is probably the one I like most. Again, we do have both these guys projected as solid underplays, but I would feel better about taking the Zay Jones under than the Chris Kirk.
All right. I was looking for ETN, but do we not have him?
I don't think we have him projected in the optimal lineup is the only thing.
Okay.
You must have a prop up for this.
No,
game.
we do. We do. But I think right now, and look, shout out to Lofty because we talked about this specifically on the odd shop, but I would think there's a pretty good angle to go under his rushing yards with just how good things are with the Titans rush defense, especially if you like the Titans to hang in this game. Yeah,
it's almost a little bit too simplistic in some ways, but I mean, it makes a ton of sense. Like Travis Etienne, again, like I mentioned, the Titans, they've been up and down as a defense, but they held the Kansas City Chiefs to 20 points. They held the Bengals to 20 points, and that's when they were healthier. And they're getting some D-line help back. Pretty much everyone has been at practice. So I mean, again, like if you're going to look for maybe a Chris Kirk over reception, pairing it with Travis Etienne under. I mean, again, we don't have his prop up yet, but maybe Mike can find it. That's going to be like a pretty good correlation there. So It looks like it's in the 70s there for the receiving or the rushing total. I mean, I like 70.5.
Okay.
So it's actually even bigger. Like I've seen 68.5 lines up on Etienne this week. So I think that's a really solid play. If Travis Etienne is going over, like the Jags are probably winning this game by like 10 points or up by 10 points. And then you've got to think, well, I mean, I think that the nice thing about the Jaguars players, Etienne does correlate pretty well with what's going to happen with the receivers. If Etienne's going over on the receiving or the rushing yards, I think it's going to be pretty hard for Zay Jones and Chris Kirk to hit, especially over on the receptions. So they'd probably make for good correlation plays on the unders. And then maybe even on the other side, you may even look to go with like a Robert Woods or a Treylon Burks overplay as well with Etienne going over. So you can kind of stem it off Travis Etienne as a beginning point. I think there's a good chance though that the Titans keep him under and they keep him in wraps, and that's what keeps this game close.
Yeah, you mentioned Robert Woods. He's popping up pretty high on our optimals. Again, they're all unders except for Jarrett Stidham, we're going to get to in that second game for the most part. So there's no real surprise here. It seems like both games are projected, at least with some impact players or what's left of impact players to go under their projections, right? So Robert Woods, though, is popping up a bunch on our optimals, 10, 9-point plays. So again, from our field, because we don't have like the typical ownership percentages that we play off with leverage, it would seem that Robert Woods is going to be a house favorite to go under the 4.5 receptions. I don't know if you can make the argument that it's a good counterplay, Jeff, but Dobbs is not horrible by any means. We'll get to him in a sec, but he's not horrific. I mean, he's a backup quarterback who can make some throws every now and again.
Yeah, and the thing with Dobbs that I found interesting, he got Robert Woods going last week. Robert Woods had one of his best games with Josh Dobbs, which kind of interesting. Like Robert Woods is a fairly decent wide receiver. He's not that old yet. And look, like these defenses are very similar. I mean, Jacksonville's secondary is not good either. So again, if you're playing for the type of game that we're expecting, I think you and I are both expecting Derrick Henry, 20 plus carries, the Titans defense stiffening up, not allowing Travis Etienne to go for big yardage, and probably a lower volume game from Josh Dobbs. Taking the under on Woods is fine. But if you think Etienne's going to explode and you can take his over and you just think that the Titans are going to be in catch-up mode, I mean, a Robert Woods over as like a lower point play, I think makes sense. Now, I wouldn't use it high up because, again, Dobbs is, the Titans as an offense, they haven't really featured anyone in terms of receiving this year. Like Woods was brought in as the wide receiver one, but we've seen guys whose name I can't even pronounce, lead them in receiving, right? Like Nick, whatever his name is, the guy with like 4 names. So
Westbrook.
Yeah, right. Nikeem Westbrook. So, Woods is still a dicey play, but if you want to use him as a low point comeback play on like a Jags domination win where Etienne's going over maybe, I think that makes sense. That would be the situation where Dobbs is throwing late in the game, where Woods is maybe catching a couple garbage time passes or just against prevent defenses. And, I like the way he looked with Dobbs last week. I mean, Josh Dobbs made the wide receivers on Tennessee look better than they have all year. So it's something to look at, but it's not something to go crazy with either. There's a reason Woods is projected for unders, a strong underplay. And I think that's because the most likely scenario in this game sees Derrick Henry taking 22 plus carries and Josh Dobbs maybe only attempting 20 passes.
Well, that's the thing. Like, let's look at Dobbs and Henry, because I think those two are going to be involved in over under, right? Like you're pretty much going to target probably an under Dobbs if you're targeting over Henry.
I think Dobbs under passing yards might be the most owned prop in this game. If I had to guess right off, just even of the entire weekend. Again, and it is interesting, right? Because we do have Tennessee as like touchdown underdogs here. I mean,
it's crazy.
Usually in that spot we say, well, the quarterback's going to be passing late into the game. So again, I think you could, like, usually when we get these higher owned props, we say, what, just roll with it. But like there is scenarios here where you can build around a Jags blow win. And, maybe you take the under on Trevor Lawrence passing yards, you take the over on Travis Etienne rush yards, and maybe the Jags defense is doing some work as well. But then you also take the over on Dobbs passing yards. And that would be a really good leverage lineup, in my opinion. because I don't think anyone's taken the over on Josh Dobbs passing yards. Right. And I think that's a really interesting way to build. So this game offers us like a lot of different ways to build around it. It's a pretty interesting, skill set on both sides, because, we have a Tennessee team that really wants to run the ball, but if they can't, if it's not effective, or if they get behind, they're going to have to kind of, unleash Josh Dobbs, so to speak. So I think Dobbs under, of course, I understand the projection and it makes a lot of sense, but there's certainly an argument for, including him in a different kind of play as well.
Anything left on this game before we move to the second one here, which is technically the first one?
I think we touched on most of the main players here. Like I mentioned, Treylon Burks.
Yeah.
I think if I was going over on like one receiver, now we got to look, like he was questionable this week, and I admittedly have not like seen any updates on him. But if he's good to go, Treylon Burks is a dude who can take that 5-yard out and go 30 yards. So I think that as a comeback play, I'd actually be more interested in a healthy Treylon Burks, going over. Than necessarily a Robert Woods. It's more of a low point play. I don't think you need to mess around too much with these wide receivers on Tennessee. I think the under on 4.5 receptions for Woods still makes a ton of sense, just as like an optimal play. But Burks is interesting. If that's one you want to mix in, get a little bit of lower ownership onto the over, I think that makes sense.
Jarrett Stidham is our only optimal over in our 10-point projections. Now he's popping up a couple of times, but he is the only over. And it's 177.5. And I know that the other shoe is going to come down at some point, but I mean, the Chiefs defense isn't great this year by any means. No. So I wonder if that number is simply too low, Jeff.
It feels really low, man.
Right?
I mean, it's like you said, like, I know before the show, you're sitting here like thinking of scenarios, and look, it's Jarrett Stidham. So, I mean, he can certainly find a way to go under this, but like, what is the scenario? Maybe Stidham gets picked off early. The game is just so out of reach, and it's just like they just dump. They're just, sacking him like on every drive. I guess that's one route. I think the other route though is maybe Josh Jacobs is just taking over this game.
Yeah.
And like the Chiefs are the ones who are having to do the long drives. Don't forget that the Chiefs don't have as explosive an offense this year as they've had in the past. They don't have that big strike play with Tyreek Hill. So, yeah, I guess there's ways to go about it here. But I think with the way the Chiefs offense has been, or the Chiefs defense has been performing, just allowing a lot of big chunk plays. I don't know, man. Like, it's a really low number. We're not talking about 197.
No.
Or just him needing to get to 2. He's got to just get to 180. Like, I think that the game flow here would have to be a little bit almost crazy and very fluky for him to not go over. So I think you have to trust at least a little bit of what you saw last week with Stidham, which was against the team in San Francisco who was like not top 5 in defensive DVOA. So yeah, this is one like I would just go over on and not really think too much about it. I mentioned the Josh Dobbs under in the last play. This one's obviously going to be highly owned, but I don't think the scenarios are plentiful enough to really think about making a contrarian move on Jarrett Stidham to the under.
No, I'm with you. The one thing though that jumps out is how everybody around him, like we have him projected pretty strong going over 177.5. Yet, Jeff, when you look at everybody that he's going to be throwing the football to, they're all unders.
Yeah.
So is Jarrett Stidham now going to turn into the, somebody who's just going to spread this thing around, left it hit 15 different players? Probably not.
No, I mean, definitely probably not. It is kind of interesting. Like, obviously we don't have the Raiders projected for a huge day, but because, like we got Waller projected for under, we even got Devontae Adams for, I think it's an under 6.5 reception. So, I mean, either you're just counting on, like, you're just saying that the Stidham under is just too low and you're going to take some unders to go with them, like with maybe like a Devontae under, or you're just looking at this and saying, well, these are all too low and I'm going to take Stidham over and I'm going to take a Waller over yards and maybe an Adams over reception with them. So there's a couple different ways to play it. I think that, either way is actually fine with the Raiders. This game, like the way I envision this game is the Chiefs just coming out, probably just having 2 or 3 clean drives, getting up 14-0, and the Raiders just kind of, and I don't want to probably waving the white flag at some point, but still getting some yards, like, so I am kind of almost in line with these projections. I don't see Devontae Adams going for a massive game. I think he could top out at 5 or 6 catches, and Darren Waller, I mean, is just kind of been up and down anyways. So I don't know if he's a player I want to take a shot with, but could one or both of these players go over? Yeah, absolutely.
Man, I'm just looking at the other side here, and it's a similar situation. We talked about Kadarius Toney right away. He is a heavy favorite to go under, and I granted, as far as game flow and all, but that's the big one, the biggest one on the Chiefs side from our projections. That's pretty much screaming that you go under that.
Yeah, and I mean, the Chiefs wide receiver situation is, again, like it's been so up and down, and they obviously they like Tony. He looks good when he's out there, but he's never on the field, so he's been hard to integrate. Mecole Hardman, I believe, is going to be active for this game as well. So another dude who actually has some rapport with Patrick Mahomes. I would say, this under on Tony is another one that it's one of our highest projected plays as well. It's right up there with the Dobbs and the Woods play. The under 3.5 reception, you got to feel pretty good about. I don't even know if Tony's ever gone over this yet this year with Mahomes. He maybe had one game where he did, but it was only it was not by much. So Kadarius Toney, again, if you're going to take the over on or the under on the receptions or yards, probably go under on the receptions. If they break him for a big screen pass or something, that'll feel terrible. So he just hasn't been getting the targeting. Even last week, like we saw Marquez Valdes-Scantling pop up with 7 targets. He's still going to play. I mentioned Hardman's going to be back. Even if he's only playing 30 snaps, it's probably just a target or 2 less for Tony. It's 4 receptions doesn't sound like much, especially when you're playing the Chiefs offense, which does like to pass a lot, but there's just a lot of receivers in play, man. And don't forget that Travis Kelce could just pop up with like 14 targets here any day of the week. And we haven't talked about Jerick McKinnon, who's getting like 7 targets a game.
Yeah,
now,
go ahead. I think he's a really sneaky option in this game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have his props up right in front of me. So yeah, I mean, maybe a producer Mike can bring them up for us, but again, like McKinnon been a very strong in terms of just like the receiving option of late. So he's going to be taking obviously a big chunk of the just some targets out there as well. So I don't know. I mean, there's no reason for me to go against the Kadarius Toney prop for sure. I like the under there. I'm just trying to think how we want to play the rest of this, because the one thing that is in play here is Patrick Mahomes for the record at 430. We got a 330 prop up. No shock that we ever projected as an underplay. One thing I like, this is one prop I do like on Mahomes. I like going over on 2.5 passing touchdowns. There is no McKinnon prop. Okay, so there you go. They just decided to leave him off, which is kind of disappointing because he's been such a big part of the offense. But I think if you're going to get a little bit contrarian here with Mahomes, I would go over on 2.5 passing touchdowns. Really weak Raiders defense. I think you could see Mahomes throw 2 touchdowns in the first quarter.
I like that.
Like I really do. I mean, he's been beating up on the Raiders in his entire career. Travis Kelce loves playing the Raiders. This is a game where they just win. They get the number 1 seed. They're not going to mess around here, man. Mahomes is going to come down, lead a couple quick drives. As long as you don't get like Pacheco'd at the 1-yard line or something, I mean, you should be okay here. And even if you do, I mean,
it's only one time probably.
Yeah, you could probably get there in like a third quarter passing touchdown. So I like that one over on the 2.5 passing touchdowns from Mahomes here.
It's a good one, man. You mentioned Pacheco. He's at 67.5 rushing yards. This isn't a 10 or 9 point in our optimal, but it's coming up, 6 5-point plays. Going under.
As the under. Yeah, I was going to say, I just wanted to make sure. I actually didn't have that one in front of me, but now I see it. I agree with it too. Like, I like the under on Pacheco. I really do. The Raiders just, they're not what you call like a scary rush defense, but they're certainly better at that than getting any pressure on the quarterback or just stopping anyone on the outside. So I think that they'll probably look to just stuff that middle with Pacheco and just not even like force. I mean, I say force Patrick Mahomes to use like his outlets more, but that's what Patrick Mahomes wants to do. So the Raiders to me are going to be a pretty easy team to figure out here. I think that's a really big total for Pacheco. I think you'll just see Jerick McKinnon work in a little bit more again, and potentially even guys like Hardman and Tony take a couple passes and burn them that way. So pretty bullish on a big week for Mahomes. If you really want to go for the narrative too here, I mean, you could go over on the passing touchdowns, you could go over on the passing yards, and if he does end up, getting close to it, like you'll have, I don't know how many people are going to be doing that, to be honest. It's a really big total on Mahomes, like 330. I don't think I've seen a prop that big this year. I don't know how many people will actually be doing that. So yeah, it's a narrative play. And like you'll need the Chiefs defense to help you cooperate here, because if the Chiefs defense is just stopping Jarrett Stidham, at some point, Andy Reid's going to pull the plug. But if the Chiefs defense is allowing some yards here, and some scores, then Mahomes will just get to keep passing. So if you're going to go over on Mahomes, everything, maybe you do look to take the over on like Devontae and Waller as well, and really just play for like the 40 to 27 kind of game or something like that. So it's certainly in the realm of possibilities. We got two bad defenses, I think you can pretty much say, and there's always things that can happen when that scenario's around. So
I love that scenario. All right, brother, is there anything on either game that we forgot to hit from you, from something you saw, a player, Austin Hooper, somebody across? It doesn't have to be, but I'm just curious.
No, it's funny. It's funny you brought up Austin Hooper. I actually really like his under this week. He's played less than 50% of the snaps last of his 3 games. He's split and he's been outproduced by the rookie tight end there, whose name I also can't pronounce. So under Austin Hooper is like projecting is like maybe a 5 or lower point play, but it's one I certainly don't mind going in. He's got 25.5 yardage prop. And then just looking through, I think we actually touched on a lot of stuff. I also don't mind the over on Travis Kelce this week too. Even though he's, got a bigger yardage prop up there, if Patrick Mahomes is going for a big day, I mean, I'm sorry, but like Travis Kelce is going to put up like 100 yards. I think he's gone over 80 yards in 6 of his last 8 games against the Raiders. Loves playing the Raiders. So, you can just jam Kelce in there as an over if you're going over on this Mahomes stuff too.
I love it because it's a great opportunity, and you've laid it out here to target some circumstances in these 2 games, mainly with the success that Mahomes has had against the Raiders, where the Raiders are in the season, and especially getting up early, which I love, because even if the Raiders find a way to stay in this game, it's not like Kansas City is going to sit Patrick Mahomes in the second half. So no. I love it, man.
And Andy Reid is great. Like, he's not a dude who pulls guys early. Nope. He never has been. He likes to play guys in preseason. He will let Patrick Mahomes stay out there until at least the third quarter. I mean, even if it's like 35-0. So, I think there is. I said it this morning, but I think there is a chance Mahomes actually gets to that record this week. It really wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, man. I might have to bet that. I'm sure there's a prop for 450 right out there somewhere.
Yeah, someone's got it.
Awesome. Hey, I mean, it's going to be hard for him to not get 3 TDs with that many yardage, but
yeah,
I have to see how that correlates for sure. Awesome. All right, we want you to take advantage of one more time this awesome opportunity at No House Advantage. Use our promo code Stokastic, and we're going to match your first deposit now up to $100. That's insanity. And all you need to do is use our promo code Stokastic. You'll be good to go. The NBA version of this show is coming up right now. Jeff, have a great weekend, brother. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot, guys.
See ya.